Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from Alex Merced Coder, and again, this is our project where we're taking the API we built in the early part of this particular Express playlist. Okay, so again, just to kind of walk through how the whole playlist played out. First, we built an API, then we built a front end with jQuery. Then we deployed the API as one standalone repo. So basically, we served the front end via Express's static feature. Then we separated it out into two projects and deployed that. And now we're going to do a React front end as two different projects. So again, we have the API project, which is the same as before. So that hasn't changed from the earlier part of the series. And then we have the front end. So in this video, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go to the API and we're going to get that running. Okay, so I'm going to just go over here, open up the terminal in there. And I'm going to say npm, do I have scripts for this one? Yep, npm run dev. Nope. npm run dev. And there is a problem. Let's find out what it is. I think if I typed in somewhere lifecycle. Cannot find module. Okay, so that means I probably need to reinstall the dependencies again. Okay, so let me do that. So I'm going to do an npmi so that we reinstall all dependencies. Okay, that's done. Let's try that again. Still doesn't like it. Why not? libcli. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this entirely. And then reinstall it. And let's see if it actually appears there. ls. Or am I typing that into by accident? List. That's a command that I created on my machine, so it's really just ls-la. Let's see here. Yep, node modules got recreated. Just want to make sure. npm run dev, and there it goes. So it's working. Okay, so there's our API, and again, our API I think was, yep, it was the one where we create dogs. So this should still connect to our Heroku database, actually, which would, well, actually, is it connecting to our Heroku database right now? Let's find out. Server.js.env. Yeah, it would be. So let me go, I have to go make that temporary username and password. Because we see here it didn't connect to Mongo. Oh, it says you are connected to Mongo. Let's just test that out, make sure that's working. So I'm going to go open up Postman. And it's at 3003 right now, so let's try that out. And that's taken a while, so I do think I need to go rebuild that username. Double check. Yep, it's on 3003. Okay, well I'm gonna go rebuild that username because again we set it up as a temporary username over there at Mongo Atlas, so that means it's probably expired well by now because it's been a few days. Let's go through all this again. Logging in, database access, let's create a new thing. Again, it's going to be test. Test. Enter password. We did it the way we did it before. I remember if it was password. I'm sure it was password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's just make sure. Password 12345. Good. And we're gonna make it temporary again, and we'll make it this time. We'll make it for 1 week's fine. Okay, so that's created. Okay. And then what I am going to do, so I'm going to just resave the server.js so it restarts the server. Good. Let me just double check that my .env file actually has that password, password 12345. Good. And let's just do this again. So could not get response. Let's try that again. And now it works. Okay, good. Our API is working. Cool. So now that we have that going, our server is running, I can begin building the React application. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a separate terminal window that is in our front end folder and do npm run dev. So that way it runs the dev on the front end. Okay, so now we have there's our front end, and now we just need to build that out. Okie dokie. So just to recap, when it's React, none of our code is actually done in the HTML. This is literally all our HTML. Everything is injected here. Okay, there's where all the React will be injected. Generally what we do is we start off by injecting an application component here. So if we go into our source folder, we see there's the app component. So generally at the top of each file, we're going to have our import. So we always have to import React. Only for our app component do we need to import React DOM, because we only use it to inject the app component into our HTML. Everything else will be contained in the app component, so we don't need to inject any other components. This is the header component that I created, and the footer component I created, so that way you don't have to worry about importing those. And then this is just a CSS style sheet, okay, which you'll see in there, CSS style, so you can do all your styling in there. Okay, so again, things have to be imported for you to use them. Cool. And if I take a look at those files, header, see I have to import React. I really did not need to import React DOM, so I can remove that. I just need to import React, and then I'm going to export it. So that's why I'm able to import it, because I exported it here. So I'm exporting this function here, so export default, and then this is an arrow function. And then I'm importing it and calling it header here, so that I'm using it as header. And notice that's kind of weird, right? See how I imported this header function, which was just an arrow function in this file, but I'm able to use it kind of like an HTML tag. That's what's called JSX. This is like the weird HTML JavaScript hybrid that Facebook created when they created React. And one of the things that makes React very fun, because you get to write all your code pretty much as HTML. Okay. Now, just to kind of explain how this works, so this is so basically each component in my, at least in my template, is a function. It doesn't have to be. It could be a class or a function. I'm not going to go too deep into the difference between the two. But the basic syntax is you name your component. Convention is to do it with an uppercase. Then you pass in props. Okay, don't worry about what props are right now, just know you have to pass them in. Okay, and then whatever the function has to return JSX. So see the way you denote JSX, because JSX is kind of like a new data type. It's essentially a clump of pseudo HTML that React knows to render as HTML. And generally you wrap it in parentheses, and there has to be one parent tag. The easiest thing to do is just use this thing called a fragment. So that's this thing. So you just put the empty brackets and just wrap your JSX in there, and you can just do whatever you want HTML-wise in here. Okay? And then any components you import, you can then use just pretty much as these self-closing tags. Okay? So that's essentially the basic idea of JSX. So right now our page is the header component, then we have an H1 that says hello world. And the next thing that's pretty cool is you can create variables. So right when my function's definition starts, but before my return value, I'll create a variable, const. Oh, there's my alarm. Let me hit that button. See, luckily I woke up early so I can make this video for you guys. Okay, but I think there's another alarm coming, so let me shut that one off too. Good. And see right now it's complaining. What is it complaining about here? So running const return. Oh, it's because I have a floating variable definition, so I need to finish this. So const. Oh, I want to say const title. So this is like the title of our website, and we're going to say it equals list of dogs. Okay, it's a string called list of dogs. Nothing you can do in React is you can interpolate data into your JSX. The way you do that is you use curly brackets, a single set of curly brackets. And basically whatever's inside the curly brackets could be of any valid JavaScript expression. Okay? The simplest being just the name of a variable, so title. Okay, so now if I go, so basically I'm just saying, hey, whatever the value of title is, put it right there. So now if I go back to the application, see now it says list of dogs. Okay. So for now, I'm not going to really use this header component or footer component. Okay, so we just want the title there. And basically, we want the title. We want a place to list dogs. Okay, so let's create a new component that's the place where dogs get listed. Okay, so we'll come back to that. So let's go back to my components folder. I'm going to take my template, copy it, paste it into my components folder. So that way it makes another copy. I'm going to rename it doglist.js. So this way I have everything I need. I don't need the React DOM line. Okay, props. So what I want to do is create a container. Okay, and I'm going to assume that we're going to pass in the list of dogs into this component. That's where props comes in. We can pass in information via props. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just say const dogs, because I'm going to pass it into something called dogs, equals props. This is just a structure. I'm just saying, hey, there's this object called props. I'm assuming that this is dogs property, and I want to just take that out. Okay. That's essentially it. Okay, I'm going to create a UL, and now I want to iterate over that dogs array. So we're going to use JavaScript to do that. That's the cool thing about React. You can just pretty much use JavaScript to do a lot of things right in the middle of your HTML. So because that's how JSX works. So I'm going to just do this. I'm going to take the dogs, the list of dogs, which is I assume is an array, just because I'm thinking through how I'm going to do this ahead of time. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to pull from my API. My API is going to give me an array of dogs. I'm going to pass that array of dogs into this component. Dogs.map. So I'm going to map over the dogs array, because what we need is JSX. So it's going to iterate over each dog, and then we'll be able to return some JSX, which will then render to the screen. So we'll say that each item is a dog. So actually just do it this way. Dog index. Okay, because again, in functions like map, you can highlight two things, not just the thing that you're iterating over, but the index of the thing. And actually, if we want to do JSX, so parentheses, I'm just going to return some JSX, nothing else. So I put some parentheses for the JSX, and I'm going to put a fragment, so that way I don't have to worry about, like, because React complains if you have more than one parent tag in the JSX element, it has to be like all wrapped in one tag. So then here we'll just say the h1 is dog.name. Okay, the name of that individual dog. And I think that's all we had in our dog, if I'm right. Let me go back to our API and go back to the schema, which would be, we did do that in models. So it's just name and age. So we do have age. Okay, then I'll do an h3, and then that one will be, oh wait, right now I'm just writing dog.name. I need to interpolate it in there, so it has to be curly brackets. Dog.name. Because again, within the map, I have access to the individual dog on each loop. because again, map's looping over the dog array. So what map does, it loops over the array, you pass in a function, and whatever that function returns, it creates a new array of that. So essentially what we're doing is we're mapping over the dogs array, and then each time we're returning a JSX element. So we're returning this JSX element based on the individual dog that we just looped over. Okay, and that will do that. Okay, and that actually will do it. That'll list the dogs. Okay, so we have our component save. Now let me go bring that back in our app.js. So I'm gonna go import dog list from dot in the components folder, and the file is called doglist.js. Okay, so that's going to bring in the file. I have it available to me, but I want to make sure that I have that data, dog list. Okay, so here's where we're going to want to create something called state. Okay, state are special types of variables in React. What state does, different than any of the other variables, you can just declare normal variables. But state, what it does is that state, when you change it, it causes the component who owns that state to re-render, which means it'll re-render any components that are built inside that component. This is what gives React the reactivity, okay? Because it reacts to the changes in data. So instead of you having to sit there, empty out a div and rebuild the DOM, it just knows, rebuild this component, and you don't have to like give it specific directions to do so, which is nice. So I want to create a variable that's the list of dogs that when it changes, my thing builds. So how do I create a piece of state? Okay, and again, I'm teaching this purely the functional component way. There is different ways to do this if you're using classes. You should eventually learn both, because you'll find both in the wild when you're working on a React job, but yeah. So const, we'll say, the way you have to do is you have to use array destructuring. So we're going to say const dogs set dogs. Okay, so basically first is the name of the actual variable. The second is the name of a function you're gonna get back to change the variable. You have to always change the variable using the set function. Because what the set function does is that not only does it change the value, but it tells React to rebuild the component. So if you don't use it, the component doesn't rebuild, which then ruins the whole point. And then you have to use this function called react.useState. This allows you to create that state, and then what you do is you pass in the original value, which is just going to be an empty array. Okay, so it starts out as an empty array. Cool. Now what I can do is I'll say dog list. There's our component. And I want to pass in that piece of state, and the way you do that is you pass it in as a prop. So I remember I mentioned that I was going to pass in as a variable called dogs. So I say dogs equals, and then I'm not going to pass in a string, I want to pass in the actual variable. So I'm going to put curly brackets and say it equals dogs. Okay, and that makes sure that I'm passing in the variable, not just like the string of dogs. Then I put a these are always self-closing tags. And so what this tells me is that put the dog list component here and pass in this array that we made over here into this component. So now the dogs array gets passed into dog list, and dog list is going to render that to the screen. Okay, so right now it's not going to render anything. Why? Because we don't have any dogs yet. Why is Hello World still showing up? Where's Hello World coming from? Oh, because I have this Hello World here. So let me get rid of that. Okay, so I got rid of that from the dog list component. But see, right now we have, and then you can download the React DevTools extension in the browser. So Control-Shift-I. So if you get the React DevTools, you'll get this component tab in your DevTools, and you can see the different components you created. So here's my app component, and inside of it is the dog list component, which again doesn't say dog list because the function's not named, because I exported it. I just made it a default export. But I can see an app, dogs is part of the state. So we have this piece of state here that's the empty array. And then we passed it to the dog list as a prop. Okay, so props always pass in. So basically, always think of prop as information from the outside, state is information on the inside. And yes, state does, I mean, React does take a while to get used to. Okay, so got it. So we created a piece of state. It starts out as an empty array, and then we're passing it into the dog list as a prop. So the last piece is to figure out how do I go get the information from an API. So for that, we need to do an API call. The way you do an API call in JavaScript, I mean in React, is you're going to, for this purpose, we're going to do it in a lifecycle function because we need it to happen right away. The minute the component shows up on the screen, we want that API call to happen. But we don't want it to happen over and over again. Because if I just put it right here, what's going to happen is that component's going, I'm going to do the API call, update the state, which rebuilds the component, which will make another API call, update the state, and just creates this infinite loop of state updates. So that to avoid that, you're going to use a function called react.useEffect. This allows you to define something that you can use, only at certain times. So what we do is we pass in a function, and whatever the function does, it does right away. Then we're going to pass in, as a second argument, an empty array. Really what this array does, it says, the way this function reads is that when anything in this array changes, well, basically run this function once when this component immediately opens, okay? So when this component begins, run this thing. And then repeat it anytime anything in this array changes. If there's nothing in this array, there's nothing it's tracking, so it'll never repeat. Okay, but all I really want to do is I want to go grab the data. So what I'm going to do is sit there and say fetch, and that's http://www dot, localhost 3003/dogs. And again, that needs to be a string. Okay, neat. Okay, so now we have the API dogs, but again, just like any fetch call, I have to first then take the response and turn it into JSON. So response.json. Then I can take the response and do stuff with it. Then respond, we'll just say data. And what I want to do with it is I want to set that dogs array, so set dogs, and I want it to equal the result of what we just got back. Okay, and that's what that's going to do. And then it's going to update the dogs array. So let's see if that's working. Go to the console, take a look at the error, then is not defined. Let me see how I did that, .then. Fetch. Oh, there's a comma there. There we go. Let's take a look. That's the dogs were 4 not found. Okay, so that means the API call was rejected, which means maybe that's a whitelisting issue. Because again, we have cores on. So let me go over here to API. Go back to server.js and let's take a look at our localhost 3000. Well, that's where we're calling it from, right? Yeah, that's where we're calling it from. So let's see here, let's just make sure. Man, I made a typo. So let's save it. The server's going to restart. Then I'm going to refresh this page. Okay, so now it's complaining about cores. So I'll just put both in the whitelist. So let me add that to the whitelist in the cores middleware in my server. Okay, so with the slash, without the slash, just figure it out. Now if I hit refresh, 303 dogs. Let me go back to Postman. Localhost 3003 dogs. Oh, it's dog. That's why the endpoint's wrong. So let's go back over here to app.js. Dog. There we go. That should now work. And see, there it works. Sparky, Spot, Fluffy. Oh, I did name twice. So let me go back over here to my dog list and make this dog.age. And there we go. Sparky 5, Spot 2, Fluffy, Cutie. So there we go. Okay, so we've now created the UI in React. And again, just to walk through the React flow, here's our index.html. There's a div. Okay, then there's the app.js file, which has the app component that's being injected to where that div is. Again, that's what these two lines of code are doing, which injects this app component. Inside this app component is our dog list component, which we defined over here. Okay, but basically what our component does, it has this dogs variable that's called state. It starts out empty, but then we update it right away using useEffects. So make the API call, store the data inside that dogs array. The minute it changes, it rebuilds the component, which then sends the updated dogs array down to the dog list component. The dog list component then maps the values inside that array into a UL here. Okay, and technically that probably should be an LI each time. So I'm going to do this, LI. That should be fine. I don't know why it's complaining. I think it's because the slash needs to be on the front. /li. There we go. Okay, and then let's see how that looks. Well, there you see it's a li with the bulleted list. Cool. See how am I doing on time? Yeah, we'll do making the form to add dogs in the next video. We'll keep building upon this and then eventually deploy it, so you can see the whole process. I do have more playlists on React if you want to go even deeper into React, but this is just, again, just a little bonus to kind of see how would you do if you wanted to replace your front end, replace the jQuery with React, what that would look like. So I'll see you guys later on.